I don't think that it's much of a secret that I like Yu-Gi-Oh! If you notice, there's a subtle hint to it in every video where the screen is engulfed with Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards. That's what we call in the industry an Easter egg. I've been a fan for years and years, and then not a fan for even more years before finally coming back around later on. I had a choice to make. It was either cocaine or Dino Mist, and I made the way more self-destructive choice. I don't remember exactly what it was about Yu-Gi-Oh! That drew me in at first, or what was my entry point into the series. I know for a fact it was around duel monsters, but my exact entry point is a little hazy. The first episode I remember watching was Joey vs. Esperoba, and from there I was hooked. I would beg my parents for cards. I'd watch episodes of Duel Monsters and GX all the time on demand, build decks and play with my brother, who would always help me build my decks, and then use Cloak and Dagger to snipe my best card because he's a lovely fellow who helps me with my videos. Thank you, Patrick. I was constantly getting in trouble for bringing cards to school, playing with my friends, having my cards stolen, punching a kid in the penis to get them back. Yeah, I was a bad motherfucker, what of it? It got to the point that eventually my mom would take me and my brother to a local card shop to play against actual adults who shockingly had their strategies together. This was around Tactical Evolution, as I was trying to build a Crystal Beast deck, one that a fully grown man tried to take from me in exchange for a Red Eyes Black Metal Dragon, not even Darkness Metal Dragon, and he didn't even give me Metal Morph or Red Eyes. Luckily, my brother talked me out of the trade in a move that I resented him for years until realizing he was just saving my hide. Hey, if that piece of garbage who tried to make that trade is listening, I hope you're balding. Eventually, that shop closed down like it deserved, and we went to a new one around the middle of the Synchro era. I'd upgraded my Mishmash Dark Monster deck to an almost coherent zombie deck, and with the fact that I was playing against other kids and not adults, I had a lot more luck. That's not to say I was free from problems like beating an adult who then rule sharked me to the owner for not sleeving my cards to look tough in front of his girlfriend, to getting a copy of Formula Synchron, a super rare and valuable card, to which some pervert convinced me to trade it for a copy of Velgrand Dragon and Dragonic Knight. Nice job, dirtbag, you fleeced a kid. From there, the Xyz era rolled in and I just dropped out. I don't know what it was, probably the fact that middle school beats all of your interests out of you so badly, but I just dropped it cold turkey. My brother would occasionally try to get me back into the game. I would play, he would fusion summon 3 times in one turn with Gem Knights. I would slowly hollow. It wasn't until high school that me and some friends talked about Yu-Gi-Oh! That I got back into it, eventually building decks out of whatever cards I had lying around and bringing them into class so we could play with them at lunchtime. There was one kid named Brandon who got real cocky and tried to challenge me and my agent's deck, and I cold clocked him in 3 turns. Take that, loser! After I was done with high school and moved to college, the crippling loneliness and anxiety convinced me to collect paper Yu-Gi-Oh! Again, and I started dropping real money on real cards. I made Boojins, Neospatians, and FAs around this time, and even though I couldn't go to locals for fear of girls laughing at my deck, it was still an absolute blast to get back into collecting. Now most of my dueling takes place in Master Duel, perpetual stealer of my time that I could be spending playing Chicken Little games. As you can see, my experience with Yu-Gi-Oh! Has pretty much followed the same course as my life. Start out young, starry-eyed, and plucky, be beaten into submission by the public school system, slowly work my way back into publicly enjoying things, and now whatever this is. That isn't to ignore the impact of Yu-Gi-Oh! Video games either. I would play the heck out of Yu-Gi-Oh! Games when no one else wanted to play with me. I played a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Games. There was Duel Academy on the Game Boy Advance, which let you roleplay being enrolled in a school for a game whose most complex combo was Summon Gemini Elf. World Championship 2011 made an honest-to-goodness story mode based around the events of the anime and crystallized one of my favorite formats in the game, and Falsebound Kingdom and Duelist of the Roses. 2 games I love to talk about, but they are the most bullshit, tough, archaic, and boring strategy games I've ever played. Slow down, guys, I can't keep up! However, in an attempt to branch out like they had with Duelist of the Roses and Falsebound Kingdom, Yu-Gi-Oh! Would try something they'd never done before. It wasn't a strategy game or a board game, it certainly wasn't a simulation of the card game. No, Yu-Gi-Oh! Would attempt a kart racer. A little background on the series this comes from. Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's is the 3rd Yu-Gi-Oh! series and is based around card games on motorcycles. If you're thinking card games on motorcycles, that sounds a little silly. So did everybody else in 2008, and 2009, and 10, and 11, and 12. We've been hearing this joke for the past decade, please stop. Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's began airing in April of 2008 and revolved around synchro summoning, a mechanic that pushed hundreds of people out of the game as it required more brain power than any Yu-Gi-Oh! Player was willing to put in. Counting. The story follows Yusei, a duelist stuck in the Satellite, a slum outside of Neo Domino City. While Neo Domino is a burgeoning urban wonderland, the satellite is a run-down, awful little place where police abuse their powers and the inhabitants fight to survive. Yusei is trying to get out of the satellite to get revenge on Jack, a strong man with a strong name, who stole Yusei's motorcycle and rocketed to superstardom. On his journey, he learns that he's one of a chosen few called Signers who have a connection to an ancient crimson dragon, all held within his ace monster, Stardust Dragon. On his journey, not only does Yusei end up befriending Jack again, but the twins Leo and Luna, the psychic turned psycho turned benchwarmer Akiza, and pack fodder Meister Crow Hogan, but does battle with resurrected Incan zombies, including his friend who murdered a cop and was beaten to death in jail, living Nazca lines who are woefully underwhelming, robot assassins sent back from the future, his own heterosexuality, and a version of himself come back to kill him. There are some of you who may believe that Zone is just some guy who got surgery to look like Yusei. Don't ever say that again! Regardless of an undeniable drop in quality come the end of the series, Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's is still looked back upon as one of the most beloved series of Yu-Gi-Oh! There is. You can probably tell from the description that it goes a lot darker than the usually lighthearted GX.
Tell Mike, inside, look through.
Give me your flashlight. Why? What's wrong? What's wrong is this mummy looks familiar.
And is more in line with what some people liked about duel monsters. Add on to that duels with a lot of fun twists and turns, enough Akira bike slides to support my theory that anybody who puts them in a show gets a tax break, and duel monsters on D-wheels solving one of the biggest problems Yu-Gi-Oh's always had, watching two people playing a game while standing perfectly still is boring, then you have a recipe for success. It was that motorcycle riding, however, that got the wheels turning on a brand new game idea. Out popped Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's Wheelie Breakers. I mean, if they were ever gonna pull the trigger on a game like this, now was the time. 5D's had racing built into its bone marrow. However, the timing of this game's release does raise some concern. It was released on the same day as World Championship 2009 Stardust Accelerator. These two idiots were released on March 26, 2009, so the game was released after Season 1 ended and well into Season 2, which means that at the very least it will cover all of Season 1. What's the issue? Nothing happens in Season 1! Show doesn't pick up till Season 2 when the Darksiders show up. Season 1 is just the Fortune Cup and the duel between Jack and Yusei. That means that they had to stretch, and I mean stretch, for any amount of content to fill this game with. You'll see what I mean later on, but for now, let's just get the game started right. First thing you get is a fairly snazzy looking opening showing off some of the cool looking monster models for the game, like Stardust Dragon, Red Dragon Archfiend, Black Rose Dragon, but also showing off just how hard we had to scrape the bottom of that barrel. We have Hunter Pace, Bolt, Tanner, Gil, Ransborg, who, if you asked me who he was before this, I would just say, and Facility Chief! I have been very strict on not playing games without Facility Chief in them. I'm holding myself to that! Once we're done with the intro, we hop into story mode and have to name ourselves. I thought it would be real clever of me to name myself Mr. Speed in order to trick the game into making me faster. I picked my clothes and dual runner color. There were options that weren't hot bubblegum pink, and I wasn't about that life and picked it, naming a car in order to keep the game guessing. So our story begins with a big, beautiful wall of text telling us we're basically Lion King 1.5ing this. And don't you remember that as soon as Yusei left the satellite, you were right behind him? It's basically a retreading of the first season's story, but swapping out Yusei for Mr. Speed, and swapping out Nobody for Riley. All the cutscenes take place in this weird-looking cardboard cutout talking back and forth to each other style. I know it's pretty common for these sorts of games, but at the same time I was hoping for just a little bit more. Not to mention not a single one of them is voiced except for one character that we'll get to, but other than that they just take place in awkward silence with the same sorta futuristic backing track over all of them. We get word that someone's willing to trade bike parts for a virtual terminal, which we'll need if we want to enter the Fortune Cup and, I don't know, stop being poor. He tries to stiff us and we have to race him to get the pieces back. I'm a little worried since he sits on his bike a lot cooler than we do, and I just sorta look forward with deadly murderous intent and we get the first race started! Wait, let me try that again. Okay, third time's the charm. And we're off! So what we're dealing with here is, shock of shocks, Mario Kart, but it's weird. So just like in Mario Kart, you can pick up items along the track, but instead of getting a random item, you draw a card from your deck. You get up to 6 cards in your hand, with them either being monsters, spells, or traps. Spell cards are the most like normal Mario Kart items, with you activating them for benefits, like speeding up, slowing down the opponent, and covering their screen. Trap cards can be set and activated under certain conditions, like taking damage or having one of your monsters be destroyed. Then there are the monsters. You can summon them to act as attackers who can throw hands with the opponent and their monsters. They can either blow up monsters or attack directly, and if you reduce their life points to 0, they spin out and can't move for a little bit. All of these require action points, which you can also pick up on the field. The idea is honestly kinda genius. Having a preset loadout of items you get at random can actually feel like you're fine-tuning your playstyle to whatever you want, and emulates the feeling of building a deck pretty well. Having monsters follow you in battle too is super cool. It feels right out of the anime. Except the whole summoning synchro monsters without a tuner, but you start asking people to do math while racing and you're just gonna be asking for fender benders. The downside? It doesn't really nail the driving controls. This game feels like it was made by people who had never even heard of racing games, and that comes down to one fundamental feature that has been needlessly gutted. You know how most racing tracks have corners and turns? Americans won't really know what I'm talking about, but they're pretty common in races. To get around them, you usually gotta drift. You can't drift in this game. If at any point in the footage you see me clumsily crash into walls like a manatee on a skateboard, rest assured that's how the game was intended to be played. It ruins the whole thing, cause now it's flat out impossible to clear a course without running headlong into a few walls just to change directions. You turn by awkwardly leaning to the side and then the bike slowly lumbers in the direction you want, so even wide turns like this one are left up to chance as to whether or not you're gonna make it. You can also turn the bike around and drive in reverse in order to keep attacking even though you're ahead in the race. Some may call it bullying, but I call it winning. It reverses your controls, but it honestly doesn't affect you as much as you think it would. If you get ahead with a good enough monster like Junk Warrior, you can destroy whatever your opponent summons and just stop them from ever regaining ground. On the flip side, your opponent can just as easily do that to you. This game's a real feast or famine. You're either completely uncontested in front or eating garbage in dead last. The track design itself is at least competent. It goes through a lot of neat areas, like a destroyed subway, round a dilapidated highway. It gets the feeling of driving through Chicago down pat. So we beat the hoodlum and get our pieces back, meaning we gain access to the virtual arena and train to get into the Fortune Cup. For our first duel, we're up against Leo, and to beat him, we're gonna have to tune up our bike. You can use cards in your deck to act as enhancements for your bike. So a card like Junk Warrior ups your top speed, Sonic Chick improves defense, stuff like that. You can also buy new cards like Skull Conductor, but I'm not exactly in the price range for that one. So you go out for your race with Leo, and you quickly learn a hard fact of life. He's just better than you. Leo completely blows past you, and thanks to his ace Gadget Hauler, you're gonna be staying back there. Gadget Hauler works a little different to a lot of monsters since his attack is a lobbed projectile instead of a tracker like most. So instead of going right for you, he can actually launch it where you're going to be instead of where you are. You can fight back by getting lucky with a Junk Warrior and a rush recklessly, which is a lot like the mushroom in Mario Kart, but if he gets out a second Gadget Hauler after you kill the first one, you are up a creek. None of your monsters are up to snuff to stop it, and once he wipes you out the first time, it's over. Not to mention, here is when you realize the disadvantage of the item system. When you run out of items, that's it. Your deck has a size limit, and if you reach it, you're locked out of items for the rest of the race, putting you even further behind. The only way you're winning is by getting lucky and saving your boost cards for the end of the race. However, Leo's looking pretty guilty when he picks a track like this. It's mostly fine except for the last turn, which will kill you more than he does. It's a full 90-degree turn after a short turn, meaning you're veering in the wrong direction and are gonna crash. It only takes a few tries to beat him though, as we go on to the next race with Facility Chief. Well, save the finale for the end game. This is the main event! Facility Chief is in one duel, which lasts 2 episodes, and then he never shows up again, but he gets an entire track themed after him here. Here we get to see one of the biggest annoyances of the game. We're not but 20 seconds into the race, and he already has Iron Chain Dragon, the best card in his deck. I don't have anything in my deck that can stand up to that. But what if I don't need one? See, this game lets you purchase better cards, sure, but it gives you the best card in the entire game in your starter deck. Sonic, baddest son of a gun on the planet, Chick. See, Sonic Chick has a special ability like a lot of cards in the game. Its effect is that it can't be destroyed by monsters with more than 1900 attack. In the real game, this is a mediocre effect to keep it on the field to be used as synchro material for Junk Warrior. In this game, it makes it the uncontested God Emperor of Racing! Iron Chain Dragon is the best card in Chief's deck. It's also a monster with over 1900 attack, meaning that he can hit me all he wants and can't do anything to Sonic Chick. Iron Chain Dragon can attack me over and over again, but at the end of the day, he can't destroy Sonic Chick. That means I can bully him as much as I want out of first place because he can't do anything about it. Can't hurt me, can't reduce my life points, and I get to keep all the cards in my hand that I want as I zoom forward to victory. My win is so impressive that we move on to a race with Bolt Tanner. He has hair that looks like a Kirby hat. We also see somebody named Mina watching us and reporting back to Rex Goodwin that we're doing well and could be useful. Luckily, we aren't at the point in the series where that means anything. Before our race with Bolt, Tetsuo Trudge butts in and threatens to arrest us for being poor. Luckily, this world works on goofy logic, and if we can beat him in a race, we get to walk away scot-free. This ain't one of them fancy pants of virtual duels either, we're in the thick of it. Does that mean anything? We get a different animation in the intro. I get unlucky and don't draw a single monster in either my first hand or next two draws, but he has Jute Fighter, so I'm not exactly worried. I hold on to Sonic Chick until he summons something bigger like his Gate Blocker, which can lay down walls for anybody behind him to run into. A lot of good that's gonna do him when he's eating my dust. It's during this period of police brutality that I get to take in just how magical the track design here is. They really pulled out all the stops. Come on, guys. They didn't have to add that hump. Eventually, he gets out Goyo Guardian, but it doesn't really matter since it can't hurt Sonic Chick, but Sonic Chick can still hurt it, which, of course, is unfair, but this game isn't fair, so I'm taking what I can get. I decide to get a little cocky and try for Junk Warrior and immediately reach the find out phase of fuck around and find out. This race is going really badly all of a sudden as I'm almost all out of cards, but luckily one of the cards I have left is Rush Recklessly, which allows me to recklessly rush directly into his bumper and lose the race. Second time's the charm though, since I keep Sonic Chick around until I know I can afford to be cocky with Junk Warrior. Before we can make it to the Fortune Cup though, Rex tests us with a duel against Akiza and her Black Rose Dragon. If the track before was on our side to make the race go smoothly, this track is actively trying to gut me like a fish. The amount of sharp turns, walls, and curves make this track unbearable, especially when you smack into a wall just before the finish line and take away all your speed. This happens every time. This is a trick that Akiza takes full advantage of since she can maneuver them just fine. She has Wall of Ivy, which is like Gate Blocker and leaves walls for you to hit, and Black Rose Dragon, which is like Iron Chain Dragon, which means it's vulnerable to Sonic Chick-related violence. However, unlike before, she has plenty of copies of Ivy Wall and Black Rose to cycle through, so even Sonic Chick can be destroyed by the sub-1900 attack Ivy Wall. Her race is so frustrating, as just when you're about to win, the game will throw her a bone and let you crash into a wall as you're about to win. The best you can do is save a boost item for the end and try to rocket past when you're done with the turns, but it's not like that's actually gonna work. This is awful track design that's flat out player hostile, but the computer can weave around it with no issues. It certainly doesn't prepare you for the next race. Now that we've beaten Akiza, we're officially allowed to enter the Fortune Cup, where our first match is against Hunter Pace. And let me tell you, it's in this race that the game shows just how awful it really is. Yeah, that's right, everything before was the good part. Hunter Pace's race is nearly unbeatable. He's just better than you in every regard, and unless you know the exploits, you're never gonna beat him. First off, it's on Leo's track except mirrored, so instead of the sorta tight turns at the end of the normal track, you end the race with a near hairpin turn from the start. Then there's the matter of Hunter. He's just flat out faster than you. There's no conceivable way to catch up. No way to even the odds. Sonic Chick, Skull Conductor, Junk Warrior, all are completely helpless against Skull Flame. It's like there's a buffer that he constantly has up that if you get too close, he's just gonna rocket ahead. When you do manage to get in front of him, he stops pedaling the bike with his feet like the Flintstones and realizes that his bike has an engine and bolts past you again. Since he's so far away, Sonic Chick's little pin missiles can't get close enough to cheese out a monster destruction, and therefore he gets to keep Skull Flame with no objections. It's just not fair. And if you're thinking, just summon out Junk Warrior, that should be strong enough, right? Wrong, because Skull Flame has 2600 attack, meanwhile Junk Warrior only has 2300, so one attack from Junk Warrior won't kill Skull Flame, but one attack from Skull Flame will kill Junk Warrior. No amount of boost items gets you within spitting distance, since if he doesn't just speed up and leave you in the dust, the game crashes you into a wall and you lose anyway. This fight has no strategy to it, no way to actually do well or improve. The only way to win is through the cheesiest, little brotheriest strategy possible. When the race is just about to end, slam down every boost spell you have and every slowdown spell in your deck. Discard everything else and just keep out Sonic Chick for protection. With every boost spell possible, you might be able to eke out a victory. There is a negative to figuring out this strategy of just keeping all your boosts in Sonic Chick. all challenge immediately leaves the game. You've basically beaten the final boss, and every other lap is just a victory lap since you've learned how to cheese the game just as hard as it cheesed you. The next duel is against Greiger on a highway with these turns, which you can imagine are just so much fun to deal with when you're about to win a race. What makes Greiger so fun is how his deck is disproportionately made up of burn cards. They sap your life points without ever needing to attack. That means Sonic Chick can't protect you forever. Even worse is that he has cards that deal damage to your monsters without attacking, meaning he can kill Sonic Chick while keeping a strong monster like his Flying Fortress Skyfire on the field. If you're lucky, he'll just blow all his chain strikes on your first chicken. While we're in the throes of no gameplay mattering until the last seconds of the final lap, I should mention the soundtrack. It's nothing especially special, but it's not like it's annoying or anything. It fits the neon future vibe the game's going for, and some tracks like the Seaside Map and Highway are actually pretty good. You've heard as much in this video. However, the audio does take a pretty big nosedive when you realize only one character in the game was dubbed into English, despite the dub being well and truly underway at this point. So, who could it have been? Yusei? Jack? Rowley? Goodwin? No. It's the announcer. The announcer who feels the need to let you know when anything happens, when you get to a new lap, when a monster is destroyed, when a monster is summoned, when a spell is activated. Whenever this little prick comes out of the corner, just tune it out, it's unbearable. This isn't even a problem because the original Japanese version does have full voice acting for every character, even during the race, but this time, no. So Greiger gets the piss beaten out of him as we prep for our final race against Yusei. I decided to waste some money and buy Summon Reactor SK because I thought it looked cool, and it takes almost 0 seconds before I was violently throttled to death. I forsook Sonic Chick and had to wait until the duel was nearly lost before I got a chance to use it again. Even after crashing into almost every wall I could and taking a comical amount of time to recover, I still play lame and win games by zooming past with 2 rush recklessly and beat Yusei. I'd love to comment more on the last race of the whole mode, but what you see is what you get. Yusei gets out Stardust, we get out Sonic Chick, the obvious result takes place. No, and I'm not kidding either when I say this is the last race. The whole season that leads up to the duel against Jack Atlas? Yeah, that's not happening. You beat Yusei and... well, that's it. We get to the credits, and here's where my theory is completely proven. The thank you for playing screen. Who does it have? Sonic Chick. They knew that this was the best card in the game and thanked you with it since they knew. They knew this was the only card worth using. So now we're done with story mode. What's left? You'd hope that there was a better answer than nervous shrugging, but... Alright, so you not only have Grand Prix mode, but a versus mode for offline and the computer. Grand Prix mode is just racing around all the tracks, but unlike the other mode, you don't just have to race against a single opponent, but a field of 8. You also get to see that, dear God, this game was not made for 8-player action. There are people firing attacks all over the place, most of whom have less than 1900 attack, meaning that the combo is useless, but everybody is playing on Hunter mode, and just have better bikes than you do. I am riding the best bike in the game, with the best speed upgrades, and just have to be hit once to be taken out of the race entirely. That, and anytime I do get a monster, it dies almost immediately. This is complete chaos in the worst possible way, where it feels like you have no control over any possible result. You just have to pray that while you're sucking down Smog in last, the other players manage to kill each other enough that you can sneak by with a lame win. It's not fun or engaging since you barely have any control. Imagine if in Mario Kart everybody always had access to the blue shell, and you got bloopers. This mode is complete garbage, but you need it to unlock other characters like Bull, Yusei, and Jack. Not like they play any differently or come with new decks for you to use, you're stuck with your own. And that versus mode? When are you going to get somebody who wants to play this with you on the same console that has Mario Kart Wii? It's a half-baked racing game with a neat integration of Yu-Gi-Oh! Mechanics at the cost of making it accessible. With a hefty dose of we've never made a kart racer before, I hope you don't hate us added to it. I'd love to see Yu-Gi-Oh! Tackle other genres like this in cool ways if it actually worked. As for now, this is just a really bad racing game with a really cool coat of paint. Instead of putting the old outro here, I'm just gonna shill for people I think are cool. Golden Nova is my boy and deserves all the success in the world. He shouted me out when he never needed to and let me onto his channel time after time. If you want info on any archetype, Zane is your man. Let me do the Metaphys video. Alice Yu-Gi-Oh! Has the superhuman ability to know exactly what I want to play at any given moment and then make a video on it. I want to play Ogdoadics. There's a video for that. Dinomorphia looks fun. There's a video on that. I'm sure Ogdo Addicts will be playable this time. Video! Kyryushin Control, another video! Seriously, they're gonna be playable this time, right? Video! Simple combo guides and deck building tips that even a dum-dum like me can get through. MBT doesn't need the shout out, they're bigger than me. Hey guys, check out this guy named PewDiePie, I think he's really gonna pop off. Even though he's white, I think his videos are pretty good. I do most of my editing and gameplay capture to the progression playoffs, so watch those and get me into Season 2. Anyway, sprites were a mistake, ban Mystic Mine.